Good morning. Hope everybody's ready, and Joel, because we will not be there. Pinch hitting this morning, so we're going to take a quick pause from that study. Kate will be back in here on next Sunday. But so it's visiting speakers, his speaker's choice, and I ended up deciding on Exodus 14 and 15, and that's really won't deviate much, if any, from there. There's plenty of material, so but feel free to comment if we don't make it through it all. We could skip a few sections or just hit the high points. So being a one-time class, we'll just try to get through all we can. So either you see it, you knew it already, or you're seeing it as you're getting there. But Exodus 14 is the Red Sea crossing, and then 15 is the Song of Moses directly after. And one thing about this that I wanted, it's just this event is so incredible that 60 or more times, that's how the Lord is referred to. The Lord refers to himself, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt, or I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, or Moses referring to God as you are a God who brought us out of the land of Egypt, and sometimes other things, out of the iron furnace, and with a powerful hand. Exodus 13 is right before, it's right after the death of the firstborn. They're about to leave. Or 13 and verse 14, and it shall be when your sons ask you in time to come, saying, what is this? You shall say to him, with a powerful hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of slavery. So God's power is put on amazing display in this event. It's not, just a kid's, first, second grade class story. It's real. And then at the end of chapter 14, Israel saw the great power which the Lord used against the Egyptians. The people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. And that was the natural outcome. And that's really where we'll end up, and that's highlighted in the Song of Moses, hopefully we get to much of that. So to start, just read a few passages here in Exodus 14. Starting in verse 1. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the sons of Israel, they are wandering aimlessly in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. Thus I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them. And I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So they've left Egypt, and let's see here. Let's get verse 10 as well. Actually, sorry, before we do there, so Exodus, I can't even read that on here. Exodus 13, 17, 18, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near, for God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Hence God led the people around the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea. So, let's see if this works. There we go. So it's believed that the Israelites were primarily in this area, kind of southeast Egypt. And this, in that area, right there where that carrot is the feet of Ramesses II, and it's possibly the city the Israelites lived in. And they've done some study. There's some interesting documentaries on this area. They found places where 600 horsemen could possibly be housed, and cities and things like that. And possibly that's where they were. I mean, most maps, even in the back of your Bible, kind of generally that area where the children of Israel lived. So the way of directly to the Philistines, I mean, the easy route, would obviously be right there along the Mediterranean Sea. But it says they led them through the wilderness. I think in the back of my Bible, it claims that the crossing was in here somewhere, and then Sinai was in here somewhere. There's other theories that the crossing was here or here in the Gulf of Aqaba. And I'm slightly more in that camp, but we just don't know for sure. And that's okay. But I guess quickly on that, we'll do this. Okay, we'll stay there real quick. All right, let's catch more of this reading. Verse 10. As Pharaoh drew near, the sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they became very frightened. So the sons of Israel cried to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us this way, bringing us out of Egypt?" So they knew they were doomed, and without some miraculous intervention. I mean, they're just saying they're just going to die. Why, was there no graves in Egypt? Is that why you brought us out here? But as we know, that's not what happens. They do end up crossing. We'll catch some more reading, verse 13. But Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. As for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry land. As for me, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army, through the chariots and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I am honored through Pharaoh, through his chariots and his horsemen." Verse 19, the angel of God who had been going before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So they see the Egyptians. They're trapped by the sea. It's very mountainous in this area. And, they're led by a cloud by day and fire by night. So the cloud comes between the camp of Egypt and Israel. So, the Egyptians are right there. It's not just like they went faster than them. They were held up. It's not like they had a bunch of time on their hands to escape or do something different. That's why they knew they were doomed. They were right there. And along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Thus the one did not come near the other all night. So the crossing's at night as well. And that's, one thing we may not always keep in mind. So the cloud comes between them with the angel. So the Egyptians can't come to them while they're escaping through the water. So verse 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, so the waters were divided. The sons of Israel went through the midst of the sea on dry land, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right hand and on their left, and the Egyptians took up the pursuit. We'll stop there for a minute. So I've seen some people talk about this. There's a lot of documentaries and things about this, and some people that aren't per se believers, there's retelling this, just this account of this historical people. But from the reading, and then from, the fact that this event, and of course I'm saying this event, this is what we're reading, but obviously what had just happened was all the plagues, the death of the firstborn, and then they actually leave, and then they cross here when they were totally doomed, and they knew it, and that's why Pharaoh sent them in the first place, because they knew that they would easily overtake them. But this strong east wind language, I've heard somebody say, about miracles in the Old Testament, and that they're not, believers necessarily in that. And it's like, well, the east wind did that. I mean, it seems obvious to me, they're not just going through a marsh that just happens to be, exposed in some dry land. And it talks about a wall on each side. So a wall would not be just, knee-deep water that's exposed. And plus, they probably would have been attempting to go through that. They're at a sea. So I don't want to spend a lot of time. I've kind of hinted on it and wanted to get through more of the reading. I want to spend a lot of time on the location of the crossing, but in no more than a couple minutes here, there's two places. I mean, if you're in the camp like me, that it's the Gulf of Aqaba, and it says that they were going to journey 3 days outside. And this is not massive mileage away, but it'd be a hard 3 days to make it all the way to either of these with that many people and in the mountains. But, it doesn't say, that I'm aware of, it doesn't say, how long it was until they got to this point. It does say they camped between Migdol and some of these other places. And my understanding of that Migdol is that's just like a Egyptian watch town. So there's multiple Migdols. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. In this general area, I also think that this is kind of where they crossed. King Solomon was, this was kind of his area along the sea there, and he erected pillars on the Saudi Arabia side and on the other side, marking the Red Sea crossing, and they're made of granite, and on the Saudi Arabia side, they cut it down, but you can still see where it was, where he thinks that they lost in remembrance. And there's markings of, Egyptian and Hebrew markings, just a look there.
Yeah, and I've seen some of that. I haven't myself researched some of those things enough to vet it, but I mean, there's another documentary that the crossing on the left there, this one, Nuweiba, that they've sent divers and things, or ROVs in some of those areas, and allegedly there's coral that's formed around what appears to be chariot wheels. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not. Some of y'all may be more up on that than I am. But one thing that we do know about these two locations is those are the only two locations in the Gulf of Aqaba that if there was no water there, you could physically cross it. Because if the water's moved out of the way, and it's a mountain, and you just can't go down. And 1 million people, various ages, maybe not that many people, but a lot of people, young, old. Now, God is God. If he wanted to create land to be there, he could do that. But, just the fact that these two areas exist, I think is interesting. This one, Nuweiba there, it's 10 miles across. It does get very deep, but it does it gradually. It's a 6-degree slope down and a 7-degree slope up in the worst spots. So ADA requires wheelchair ramps to have a 1-to-12 ratio. That's 4.8 degrees. So 7 degrees max would be 1 foot of increase to 8 foot. It's not that steep, right? I mean, you could do that. Yeah.
Steepest grade allowed on interstates.
Steepest grade allowed on interstates. Yeah. So it's just things like that kind of put it into perspective. I mean, you could walk that. If there's no water there, you could walk that. That one further down, which I'm in this camp, but I mean, again, I don't know, and if it's not that, my faith ain't shaken. It doesn't ultimately matter that much. But the other one is 11 miles across, less deep. I'm not sure about the grades on that one. Jeff?
I don't know if this is in line with
when they saw war. Mm-hmm.
Well, these people have been slaves for 400 years.
Right.
It's not like we trained them on how to use weapons. And so they're basically just a giant herd of cattle. And the Egyptian chariots and horses can herd them like a dog would. And they're not going to try to kill them, even though that might be what the Israelites need. That's their work for.
Yeah.
They just want to get rid of the leaders and take them all back. And
Take 'em back.
make place again.
Right. That's a good point. And then, right. So then, if they immediately go up to the Philistines up in this area, yeah, I mean they would have to fight them immediately. But God's leading them, and they knew they were trapped. If they're right here, in just the very northernmost corner or some large lake, Pharaoh's not going to say, "Oh yeah, they're trapped in by the wilderness and the sea." I mean, they'll just go around it by the time they can get there. I mean, but if you're here, you're trapped. I mean, you got these paths through these mountains, but Pharaoh and his army, chariots. I mean, they're versus some slaves. They are trapped. I mean, that's why he went. He had faith that Pharaoh had faith that, oh yeah, we've got this. This is easy. Why wouldn't we do this? And part of me on this too, I mean, just the fact that these two places exist, this contour map, I don't know how well it's coming up there, but you can see all these lines get really, really close together. So not only does that mean depth is changing rapidly, but it's getting very far down there. It's getting really, really deep. And there's no crossing here if there's no water. Apart from, of course, God is all-powerful, 100%. He could create land. He could do whatever he wanted to do, but the God that created our world and everything here and was leading the people, he knew where these places were. And you can kind of see in the map, too, the contour is also on the land. I mean, this is a big, large, flat area that could house a lot of people and camp by the sea, as we read in our scriptures. Again, that may be wrong, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time with that, but I think it's interesting, and I just wanted to share that portion. Oh, and I guess also on this point too, I mean, they meet up with Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who's from Midian, which is in this general area. Somebody may know that better, but it is eastern. And then when they come in, they have to cross the Jordan or somewhere up here. They have to cross somewhere because when they come into the Promised Land, they're coming in from the east side of the Jordan River. So that's what I'm saying. I'm more in the camp that the crossing was the Gulf of Aqaba, and then Sinai was over here. So a lot of people put it in here. I wasn't there. I don't know, but just a few helpful piece of information. I think that that fit the narrative that we just read. And in my mind too, that only strengthens the mighty hand of the Lord, his full understanding, his full insight. He was leading the people. He knew where he was going when he led them. And this spot might have been made at the creation for this remarkable event. Before we put that up there, we'll go on to the Song of Moses and the response. We'll catch a little bit more of the reading here. I think we stopped off in (23). Yeah. Then the Egyptians took up the pursuit, and all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, his horsemen went in after them into the midst of the sea. At the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud and brought the army of the Egyptians into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. So the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from Israel, for the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians." And the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots and their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state at daybreak. So again, this is through the night. While the Egyptians were fleeing back to normal state at daybreak, while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it. Then the Lord said, Then the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Even Pharaoh's entire army had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them remained. But the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea, and the waters were like a wall to them, on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So, a couple things there. The Egyptians realize the Lord is fighting for them and suggesting they flee from Israel. And this incredible, miraculous, of course, event did glorify the Lord, just as he foretold right before it happened, that he will be honored through this event. And the people feared the Lord, and they believed the Lord. And then despite the strong east wind language, that's not, that's definitely not, just the wind caused the seas to open. I mean, obviously God did this. He held them. There's a wall on each side. I think that's apparent if you believe the story, which I do. And from there, the response is documented by Moses and Israel here in the Song of Moses. Any thoughts or questions, disagreements? You don't have to agree with that. I tried to lay it out that, I'm not 1,000% believe this, but I'm just in that camp. Yeah.
Well, the fact that God had Moses use his rod to make it turn into a wall and then to collapse was one more opportunity for him to show that Moses was his
Chosen leader, right.
leader, and all these people that are going to murmur against him the whole time they're out there. He reinforces all the time that Moses is your shepherd,
Right.
and that gives him credibility when it comes to bring down the law.
And that was 2 seconds after they told Moses, was there, because there was no graves in Egypt? Is that why you brought us out here? There wasn't enough graves for us? But then, right, and then verse 31 we just read, they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. That's a good point, Jeff. It sets Moses up to be their leader, which, he was going to need every bit of help he could get. It was going to be a tough job.
And I think this is actually the first song recorded.
I would probably agree with that. I don't know of another, but somebody may. Okay. What time does bells ring? Remind me on that. 10 and then 15 it's over?
15.
Okay. All right, we're doing pretty good. Okay, Song of Moses, Exodus 15. Start here, verse 1. Somebody want to read the first 5 verses?
Then Moses and the children of Israel sang the song to the Lord and spoke, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has cast into the sea. He has chosen captives also. His chosen captives also are drowned in the sea. The depths have covered them. They sank to the bottom like a stone.
So the immediate response, really verse 2 is just the crux of this whole thing. This is my God and I will praise him. And to close, we'll come back to that, but the Lord is highly exalted. It talks about what he did. The Lord is a warrior. They cast Pharaoh and his army in the deeps of the sea. I mean, what else? It's just, the appropriate response, of course, to something that, amazing is to give that honor and glory to God for what he's done. Somebody grab 6 through 8, and then somebody 9 and 10.
Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters men. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrow your adversaries. You send out your fury, and consume them like stubble. The blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up, the flood stood up in the deep. The deeps congealed in the hearts of the sea.
And then 9 and 10. Somebody else, maybe?
The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall be satisfied on them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. You blew with your wind, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters.
Your right hand, O Lord, majestic in power. I mean, just, obviously great honor, bestowed on our God. The waters piled up, stood like a heap. The deeps in the heart of the sea. It's language like they were going into some pretty deep water. And it was a big wall piled up on either side. Verse 9 there, of course, talking about the Egyptians, that that they would overtake them. I mean, without God's help, of course, they would have done that. So they had every right to say that. Hence the need in this song, in this psalm, to give that credit to God, that it was His power, His mighty arm, His blast of His nostrils that made this happen. And he was leading them. And, he made the Egyptians' chariot wheels turn. I mean, he did all that, and they knew that. They ended up knowing that. So, which was really too late for them. But I mean, they understood ultimately too what the Israelites understood, that God, this is God's hand here. Hence, God was honored through the chariots, just like it said, through all of this.
But
Yep.
you made a point about all the verses that had the reminders about the Exodus to the people, those,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to point out that the song was established, I think, to record. Not everybody was a Rhodes Scholar
Right.
in terms of literature. Point being, they needed to learn this history. This history was important for them to learn, and it was going to be learned in the form of a song and to be done in such a way they would not forget what happened.
Right. That's a good point. And unless there's going to be a lot more comments, we'll run through this. And if we do have extra time, I mean, it's worth reading some of these, thumbing through some of them. And there's one there on some of the minor prophets that we're studying. And the one in Jeremiah is interesting. Jeremiah 23:7. And that one, it says, no longer will you say this, but that you brought us back, which is kind of interesting too. No, and I think we'll probably have time to get there. If not, just note that Jeremiah 23:7 is definitely an interesting one up there. So we got through 10. Somebody grab I'll do 11 through 13, and somebody ready for 14 through 17 after we do that one. 11. Who is like you among the gods, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in praises, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your loving kindness you have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you have guided them to your holy habitation.
The people will hear and be afraid. Sorrow will take hold of the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom will be dismayed. The mighty men of Moab, trembling, will take hold of them. All the inhabitants of Canaan will melt away. Fear and dread will fall on them. By the greatness of your arm, they will be as still as a stone. Till your people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over whom you have purchased. You will bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, which you have made for your own dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, that your hands have established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever.
So a lot there. Trying to find where it said, deliver them from the power of the Egyptians. Who is like you among the gods, majestic in holiness. And then 14 and 15 are definitely interesting because, they're about to go into and conquer the land eventually. I mean, they could have done it. This tells us they could have done it even easier if they'd have gone immediately and not complained and not given the bad report and had to do the 40 years in the wilderness. But the people, this is obviously such a massive event. The people find out about it and they hear about it. Word spreads. The peoples have heard, they tremble. Anguish has gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom are dismayed. Leaders of Moab trembling. The inhabitants of Canaan have melted away, terror and dread. This word gets out, and I probably could have walked right in and conquered the land. Of course, with or without that, of course, with God in their hands, they could have done that, but it would have been that much easier because these people knew, just like the Egyptians knew, God is with them. And just like they knew, at least for a time, and then, memories get short, and that cycle repeats itself. Not very far, they need water. Here in the same chapter, they need water, and they couldn't drink it. The bitter waters. And these other people, we get a description of Egypt in here, at least I think in 2 places, maybe more, that they're referred to as the iron furnace. I wish I had that verse wrote down here, but they knew. If they, not only this miraculous crossing where God was helping them, but that they escaped. They knew what Egypt was, the power that it was, and if they escaped that, then they were doomed. These other people. And in verse 17. The place of the Lord you have made for their dwelling, sanctuary that his hands have established. There's some trust there that they have in the Lord. And then 18 to 21, somebody read those.
The Lord shall reign forever and ever. For the horses of Pharaoh went with his chariots and his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. Then Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the tremble of her hand, and all the women went out after her with trembles and danced. And Miriam answered them, for he has triumphed gloriously, and the horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. Is that where you want me to
Yes, thank you. So in verse 18, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. Of course, that's true. Their memory gets a little short on that, but it's something that obviously we need to keep in mind too. The Lord is in control. They might not have felt like it for 400 years when they were slaves in Egypt, but ultimately, the Lord did what He said He would do. And then, there's all the honor and glory given to God from, eyewitnessing this absolutely incredible event. Got 10 minutes left here. So in the Song of Moses and just, the reading 14, we could have started some in 13. I was worried about time, but just very, very amazing, account of a real life event. But for us today, obviously, that's an event that, we can give glory and honor to God as well, but it's the response, as well to God's majesty, glory, and power. If you would look at, let's get out of the Old Testament for a second, John chapter 20. I think this is a good comparison, eyewitnessing the majesty, glory, amazing power of God, and the response we saw in verse 2 that we'll reread here in a second. But in John 20, Thomas was not believing. He's the one that said, unless if I see for myself, I'm not going to believe that Jesus is really raised. Let's see what verse here. 20, 25. Start at verse 24. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to him, we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see his hands and the imprint of the nails, and put my finger in the place of the nails, and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. 26. After 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them this time. And Jesus came, the doors having been shut. So Jesus appears, in there, and stood in their midst, saying, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, and he comes to Thomas. Thomas didn't have to go over there. Jesus knew this, and he went over to Thomas. Reach here your finger and see my hands, and reach here your hand and put it into my side, and do not be unbelieving, but believing. Thomas answered and said to him, my Lord and my God. Jesus said to him, because you have seen me, have you believed? Blessed are they who did not see and yet believed. And Thomas's response there is brief, but it's really, we read a lot of verses to say that, my Lord and my God, that response to, it's such an incredible thing that Jesus would be raised from the dead. He raised people from the dead, but even then, they thought that when Jesus raised Lazarus, they thought, well, if you were to have been here immediately, you could have raised him. But since it's been 3 or 4 days, you don't have that much power. They just didn't have the faith that he could do it. And then he did it, of course. And then maybe they didn't have the faith that God could raise him, he could raise himself. And so he said, I'm not going to believe unless I see it. And then he does. And then the response, my Lord and my God, which is exactly what we read in Exodus 15:2, I believe, really. The Lord is my strength and song and has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will extol him. But just the tie there, seeing an incredible event like that and the appropriate response is just, wow, my Lord and my God, I will praise him. And they do. But Jesus' comment thereafter, blessed are those who have not, because we can't see, we didn't see the Red Sea crossing, we didn't get to see Jesus either, but we believe it. And, we just need to keep that in mind. We've got these accounts, we've got all this, we can read about the crossing. Maybe some of these things here are true. God's power we can see now because we know the underwater topography of the land and that there was actually a place where they could cross if there was no water. Of course, God's all powerful. He can do what he wants. He can make land. He can do whatever. But, our God that can create this, know it's here, lead them to it, and they know that it's vulnerable to the enemy and still come out, powerful. We can see all that today. Any other comments or questions? We got a few minutes left, and I was thinking we'd just read a few of these and then maybe shut down about 2 minutes early.
One comment I was thinking about with the Song of Moses, like, one thing, they were honoring God and recognized how awesome it was what he did for them, but they kind of seemed to fail to recognize their lack of faith and their lack of trust that he would be able to save them, because right before it happened,
Yeah.
they were like wanting to go back to Egypt and be
Yes.
slaves again. And you wish they would have learned that lesson then, because 40 years in the wilderness doesn't happen or whatever.
And I mean, they just witnessed the death of the firstborn and how they were passed over in the Passover and all the plagues. I mean, was that not enough, to see the power of God before?
I'll take the opposite approach, like for Pharaoh. He saw that, for one, Moses' life, how he existed through the killing. And then
Yeah.
raising Pharaoh's house, the plagues, pillar of fire, the lighting the path for him. Separates the cities, still goes after him. Like,
Right.
I mean, the Egyptians are pretty handy, but I mean, you're not gonna win this
Yeah.
battle.
Right. Yeah. He had a lot of faith in himself sending them over, but the geography, and then he had the watchtowers and he knew where they were, and even though they were led by that, it's like, well, I can still overcome. I think just that they're trapped, and I can get them.
An ocean or a sea, and to your point, it doesn't really matter where they cross.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah, I
matter
agree.
How they say they cross.
Absolutely agree.
They went through the Mediterranean Sea. They went through the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, God can do whatever He wants.
Yep.
We know that now. We're literate people. We can study, but I guess they weren't. And it's amazing, the efforts people go to not see what's going on.
While you were speaking, I Googled the iron furnace. in
Yeah,
Egypt,
got that passage.
And it referenced Deuteronomy 4:20. Deuteronomy 4:20 says, "But the Lord selected you and brought you out of Egypt's iron furnace to be a people for His inheritance as you are today." And the commentary was the harshness of slavery and reminding them what it was like back in Egypt. Seemed to be the commentary, but the iron furnace commentary, the only place I saw it was Deuteronomy 4:20.
4:20. Okay. There's a lot. Yeah, it's up here on this list too. So, yep. Jeff.
I think it's interesting the different responses that people have to an event. Moses is inspired to make this beautiful 19-verse
Right.
song that's just so elegant. And Miriam pulls it down to like one verse
Yeah.
and makes it a dance party.
It's true. Interesting point. Any other comments? We can wrap up real quick though. This Jeremiah 23, since we're minor prophets and ending, they're going into exile and coming back and all those things. Jeremiah 23:7. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when they will no longer say, "As the Lord lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt," but "As the Lord lives, who brought up and led back the descendants of the household of Israel from the north land and from the countries where I had driven them, and they will live on their own soil." And I think as we keep that in mind, this event, all of it, the crossing, the divided Red Sea, the plagues of Egypt, everything involved with them leaving Egypt, which they would not have been able to done, obviously, without God's help. That event is how God is called all these 60 plus times. And then, as we think about in our study that He's going to bring them back, that it's equally powerful, equally without, they're not doing it themselves, equally that, God is the only way that they're going to come back together. And some of them came from various other places, and then they ended up together on their own soil. Another one of those things that, how is that possible? How could that just happen? And yet, He uses Cyrus. He uses all these, potential evil people to accomplish his will. Oh, that's the first, not the second? Okay, well, that's all right.
That's the first bill, not the
Yeah,
second.
first, not the second. Well, that's really about where I wanted to end up. I mean, unless we're okay to wrap it up a little early, or is there any other comments and thoughts on this? Or is anybody more researched on any of this, or Sinai, or any of that might be interesting to somebody? Good look at that. There's a lot here in Deuteronomy, which is the retelling of the law that, which is obviously right after, the crossing. But there's some before. It's just interesting too. I mean, just through the Judges, it's there. You can see in 1 Samuel, King, because this is in order, as we have our Bibles. So the David's time, the time of the kings, and the Psalms, and the prophets, and then it stops there because God's not referred to that way anymore. But since then, until something as equal and amazing happened, He's the God who brought them out of the land of Egypt, or I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. When I brought you out of the land with a powerful hand. Some of those are extra things are added. But anyway, I hope that was helpful. Like I said, Kate will be back in next week. We'll get back into the minor prophets and do that study. But I just thought this is interesting study. It's not just a kids class, study and topic. It's very useful to us too. So appreciate the comments, the reading. We'll wrap up there.